Hey, this is Cannaday, and today I'm taking a look at Marvel Champions Rise of the Red Skull. This is a scenario pack for Marvel Champions that adds 2 new heroes and 5 new villains. Let's jump into it. Alright, so I actually want to start off with the rule book here. So this is what shows you all the scenario and everything that happens. But I want to point out that there is a couple new keywords here. Incite X, which means when you see that, you put that number of threat on the main scheme. Permanent are cards that are going to stay in play. So even if a card says discard that type of card, permanent cards can't leave. Piercing gets past toughness, so that's cool. Ranged allows you to ignore retaliate. So if arrows or something have ranged, or if guns have ranged, you're going to ignore retaliate when you use them. And then, of course, setup. Here, there are setup cards that are going to come in the campaign that you're going to be able to start with in play. And another thing that's really cool is that I don't want to show a lot of these because I don't want to spoil a lot of the story, but the storyline goes through with these beautifully illustrated comic book pieces. This is the only one I'm going to show you since it's the first one, but yeah, I just love how the story plays out in this. And then at the back here, there is a campaign log. You can log all the things that happen, your different player identities, your current hit points, and text and things like that, or things that persist from game to game in the campaign itself. So that's the rulebook. All right, so we're going to start off with Spider-Woman here, Jessica Drew. So Jessica Drew has special deck building rules that she's a double agent. She can choose in between 2 different aspects instead of 1 during deck building. This one is aggression and justice, so it's going to have both of those cards in there as well. She has a hand size of 6, 11 hit points, and a recovery of 3. Then we're going to look at the Spider-Woman side here. She has 1 thwart, 1 attack, and 1 defense. So you would think that's pretty okay, but the awesome thing here is that superhuman agility is an interrupt. When you play an aspect card, Wonder Woman gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 defense until the end of the round, limit once for each aspect. So she's going to be trying to play a bunch of different aspects to basically boost her stats as the game goes along. So let's look at the first one here, Jessica Drew's Apartment. What that allows you to do is you can exhaust it. You can search the top 5 cards of your deck for an aspect card, shuffle it into your hand, and then, or put it into your hand and then shuffle the deck. So this is going to help you grab those aspects that you're so desperate to play, which is awesome. Then Finesse. This one's awesome too. It's a 2-cost upgrade. Exhaust Finesse to generate a wild resource for an aspect card. I mean, any of the cards that aren't your hero cards are aspect cards, and a lot of her hero cards are aspect cards as well. So you come with 2 of those, so this is going to allow you to get those resources. Self-propelled Glide. So the fact that she's going to be able to boost herself a lot, you're going to want to untap her to be able to use her multiple times, maybe to thwart or attack. Self-propelled Glide allows you to ready Spider-Woman, and she gains the aerial trait till the end of the round. That could proc off of different cards. But yeah, it just costs 1 to unexhaust her, so that's amazing. There are 3 of those in the deck, so she's going to be trying to unexhaust a bunch of times. Venom Blast. So not only is this a Spider-Woman card, it is also an aggression card. You'll see that as a theme for a lot of these Spider-Woman cards, because that will then trigger her ability here. But also, this costs 2. It is a hero action attack. Deal 5 damage to an enemy. Awesome. Straight up 5 damage for 2. Seems really good, and especially when it's going to boost her as well when you play it. Pheromones cost 2, stun and confuse an enemy. Awesome, it's always good, especially when you're playing in like solo mode or low player counts. Being able to stun and confuse both is great because you can make the villain kind of nerfed a little bit there. Inconspicuous is of course, Spider-Woman card and a leadership card for her. It is a hero action thwart, cost 1, remove a total of 3 threat from among schemes in play. So this is kind of cool because majority of the time you see where you have to do it from a specific one. This allows you to remove it from among any of the ones in play. So this is really good for thwarting exactly where you need to thwart and getting rid of those tokens. Then Contaminant Immunity. So she's immune to that poison. Cost 2. Heal 3 from Spider-Woman and give her a tough status card. The thing that's great about all of these is they're all part of her deck, but they're all different aspects, so they can proc her special ability there. So you get 2 of those as well. So you have 1 of each of those. And then Captain Marvel is her signature ally here. So it costs 4, 2 thwart, 2 attack. After Captain Marvel uses a basic power, draw a card. So basically, you use her to thwart or you use her to attack, you're going to take your consequential damage and draw a card, and she's going to help you with that card draw. This is one of my favorite allies in the game just because I love card draw so much in this. And then Spider-Man, 5 cost is pretty rough, but he is 2 thwart and 2 attack. And response, after you play Spider-Man from your hand, remove 3 threat, 3 times the number of players threat from a side scheme. So if you're playing with a bunch of players, this can wreck a single side scheme and basically just take it out of play. And he has the 4 hit points there. He's pretty expensive, but good overall. And of course, he's Spider-Man. Come on. Then there's Spider-Girl. So 2-cost ally, 1 thwart and 2 attack. Response after you play Spider-Girl from your hand, stun and confuse a minion. So this doesn't work on the villain, but it works specifically on a minion. And with the giant minions we've been seeing lately, really nice one to have, especially at that 2-cost. Cool. And then we are getting, that is all of those cards. We're going to be getting to the aggression cards that come in her deck, which of course, Spider-Man was a Justice card that comes in the deck, and Spider-Girl was an aggression card that comes in the deck. Piercing Strike. This allows you to deal 3 damage to an enemy. The attack gains piercing. So awesome. Piercing is one of the new things, so it goes straight through the toughness. So you get 3 of those. And then here's one that works really good with the stuns and things like that. Press the advantage, deal 2 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is stunned or confused, draw a card. Nice. And then for the Justice cards here, clear the area. Remove 2 threat from a scheme, then remove the last threat from a... If you remove the last threat from a scheme, draw a card. So timing these sort of cards to be able to draw that extra card can be really important and really good for Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman there, to be able to do a lot of stuff. And then here's another new card, Skilled Investigator, play under a player's control. After this guide scheme is defeated, exhaust Skilled Investigator to draw 1 card. Cool, so more card draw there is always good. And then Combat Training. Of course, we've seen that before. And we've got several other cards we've seen before. Combat Training, Heroic Intuition, Tac Team, Investigation Room, and of course, your basic resources. And then I don't like to share too much of these normally, but there's your Obligation and Viper, of course, the minion against Spider-Woman there. Awesome. Well, that is the Spider-Woman cards. Now let's switch over to Hawkeye here. Clint. He is able to basically 3 recovery, 6 hand size, 9 hit points, so lower on the hit point side here. So you're going to have to try to make sure he doesn't die. But he has Weapon of Choice. He can spend 1 resource of any type to search your deck or discard pile for Hawkeye's bow. Awesome. And then he has 1 thwart, 2 attack, 1 defense, and at quick draw action, you can exhaust him to ready Hawkeye's bow. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look. So Hawkeye's bow is the card that you're going to be trying to keep in play here. It costs 0 to play, and then it is a restricted card, so you can only have 2 restricted cards per player. And then your hero gains 1 attack for each arrow, or 1 attack, and each of your arrows gains ranged. So range is another thing, of course, that goes through the retaliate. And this is basically going to be how you play your arrows. Also, Hawkeye's Quiver allows you to basically search for arrows. So it's a 1-cost upgrade. You exhaust Hawkeye's Quiver, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an arrow event, and attach it face up to this card. Also, you may play arrow events attached to this card as if they were in your hand. This is going to let you go through the deck and try to grab those arrows. Definitely an awesome card. Expert Marksmanship is going to make it less expensive to play those arrows. So 1-cost upgrade, you get a wild resource for an arrow card. There's 2 of those. That's going to help you play the arrows. Now let's take a look at all these awesome arrows that Hawkeye has. Vibranium Arrow, 2-cost, hero action attack, exhaust Hawkeye's bow. So you'd have to exhaust the actual bow to be able to play it. And then basically you do 6 damage to an enemy. This attack gains piercing, so it'll go through even if they have toughness. So you get 2 of those. And then you have Explosive Arrow, which only costs 1. Hawkeye's bow, choose a player, deal 3 damage to the villain and each minion engage with that player. So this can help knock out some minions. Of course, you can unexhaust Hawkeye to try to play more than 1 arrow a turn, being able to unexhaust your bow there. Then Cable Arrow. So this exhausts Hawkeye's bow, remove 3 threat from a scheme, ignoring any of the crisis icons. Crisis means you have to take it off the side scheme before you can take off the main scheme. This allows you to still take it off the main scheme anyway. Electric Arrow does 3 damage and stuns the enemy. If the enemy's already stunned, it'll do 5 damage instead. Then Sonic Arrow. This confuses the enemy and does 3 damage. And if they're already confused, it does 5 damage instead. So if you're able to work on those stuns and confuses, your arrows can do even more damage. And then Mockingbird here costs 3.
2 thwart, 2 attack. When the villain initiates an attack against you, you can spend 1 resource of any type to return Mockingbird to your hand to prevent all damage from that attack. This will help Hawkeye get out of some of those sticky situations if he's just about to get knocked out. Awesome. Well, that is all of Hawkeye's cards there, all about arrows and things like that. Now let's look at some of the leadership stuff that comes with Hawkeye. So Black Knight, 1 thwart, 2 attack, Black Knight. Basic attack gains piercing, so he can go through toughness when he does his little attack there. Then U.S. Agent here has Retaliate, 3, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 5 hit points, so he's really beefy. Hawkeye, this is Kate Bishop Hawkeye, so you can play at the same time. 2 cost, 1 thwart, 2 attack. Action, exhaust this ally and discard a card from her hand to deal X damage to an enemy, where X is the number of printed resources on that card. So she could technically exhaust and be able to ping people for a little bit of damage instead of actually having to take her consequential damage and being knocked out of the game. Pretty cool little ally there. Then Sky Cycle allows you to, it's max 1 per ally, they gain the aerial trait, and you can exhaust it to ready an ally. So that's pretty cool. So you can ready one of your allies to be able to attack with them multiple times, and there's some cool little tricks you can do with these guys as well. This is team training. You can play one under your control. Each of your allies gets 1 hit point. That seems really awesome, seeing that that consequential damage normally knocks them out. You get 3 of those. Ready for action. This just gives an ally a toughness card for 1. And then Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This is a 0 cost event. Exhaust an Avenger character you control. Ready another Avenger character you control. That's really awesome when you have all these different Avenger allies that you can exhaust and then unexhaust, and then maybe use Sky Cycle to do a little bit of combos there back and forth. And the fact that Hawkeye's bow gives him +1 attack means that Hawkeye's normally attacking for 3, so unexhausting Hawkeye and attacking for 3 is normally not a bad thing. Of course, then we have a bunch of cards you've seen before. Lead from the Front, Power of Leadership, Avengers Tower, Strength, Energy, and then Criminal Past there for Hawkeye, and Crossfire is his nemesis. And oh yeah, we have a couple awesome allies here as well. Goliath is really cool and works really well with the unexhausting stuff also. He is 4 cost, 2 thwart, 1 attack, but he has 2 consequential damage. So why would you ever attack with him? Well, Goliath gets +4 attack until the end of turn if you take this action here he has. At the end of the phase, discard Goliath. So if you're able to basically have him use this action, and you can attack for 5 basically, and then use one of your other cards to unexhaust him, then attack for 5 again, there's a lot of damage that can be had with just this card if you're able to combo it just right. Then of course War Machine's awesome, comes into play with toughness, and his basic attacks have range, so they ignore retaliate, so he's able to get in there and mix it up with the bad guys. An awesome basic minion there, or basic ally there. So that's Hawkeye.
So in the campaign, you're going to have 5 different bad guys you're going to be going up against, 5 different villains here, and you're going to be going after them one at a time. I don't want to go too in-depth in these because I feel like the awesome part of the campaign is discovering exactly how all of these work. So I don't want to show you all the cards and all the treacheries and things that they have in them, but I guess I'll go through a little bit and give you a little bit of the flavor of each one. So as the scenario goes along, there are several different cards you can get that can be added into your deck. So you'll be able to choose from, like the first scenario, you'll be able to choose from some of these different upgrades that are one-time use and going to be able to do really cool effects like bring out an ally, or heal you 5 hit points, or draw 5 cards, or deal 5 damage. Lots of really cool stuff, but you have to figure out the perfect time to use them in the scenario to make them worthwhile. And then these cool base upgrades that are basically going to upgrade your stats. You get up your attack, or your thwart, or your defense, or your recovery, and they're also going to give you extra hit points. And then once you get further in the campaign, those will flip over, and then when you do those sort of things, sometimes you'll be able to get even more and be able to draw extra cards and things like that. So really cool stuff there. So those are cool things that'll be added as the campaign goes along to help you progress and feel like you have character progression as you're going through this campaign. Then also, if you're playing on expert mode, there are obligations. You'll start the game with 1, and then each time you want to actually heal your character in between games, you're going to have to take another one of these obligations. So there's one for each of up to 4 players, and you're going to be putting these in your deck as the game goes along, making the game more difficult. And each time you choose to heal, you're going to end up getting more of these, which sometimes if you're like down to 1 hit point, you might have to take the obligation, but these actually go in your hero deck. So when you draw them, they'll come out and do terrible things, but I'll leave a lot of that for you to discover on your own.
I did want to mention there's a little errata or confusion here with the encounter sets. In the actual scenario rulebook, it says that you use the Hydra Assault set, Master Weapons, and Legion's Hydra set. These are all modular ones you can do in and out, but on the actual back of his cards, it says that you use the Hydra Patrol set. Fantasy Flight has clarified that you're supposed to use the Hydra Assault set when you're playing with the scenario, but of course, if you're playing standalone, you can use whichever 3 modular sets you would like.
All right, so Crossbones here. He has 1 scheme, 1 attack, and while Crossbones has a weapon attachment, his attacks gain piercing, so he's going to be able to deal with that toughness, and you're not going to be able to stop that. He's all about a bunch of different weapons and equipping a whole bunch of these different weapons. His main scheme here is immediately going to reveal the top card of the experimental weapons deck. So you're going to have a deck of experimental weapons of 4 here. Of course, that'd be shuffled up at the beginning of the game, and he's going to have some sort of attachment that's going to go onto him, boosting up his attack. He's all about having all these different attachments, a lot of his different stuff as well. When you flip him over and attack him, finish him for the first time, he's going to go through the deck and get his machine gun, which is an attachment that's going to do indirect damage to you based off the number of boost icons and things like that. There's also, each time one of these main schemes triggers, you're going to end up putting another weapon on him and things like that. So he's going to get tons of different attachments. He uses the Weapons Master module here, which is going to have several more attachments as well. So he's going to be building up all sorts of different attachments. So the longer the game goes on, the stronger Crossbones is going to get and have all sorts of different things adding up as well. He also uses the Hydra Assault stuff here. So he's going to have a whole bunch of different Hydra guys that could be coming in as minions. Of course, this is all very Hydra themed in general. Of course, his whole deck has all sorts of different treacheries dealing with weapons and things like that. But basically, you're trying to knock him out. The main thing here is before he gets too many of those experimental weapons, which will be added into the rest of the campaign. So you're trying to keep him from stealing those. So in the scenario, Absorbing Man's trying to slow you down and take as long as possible. He has 1 scheme, 2 attack, and he's going to gain the trait of each environment in play. You're going to be putting environments in play, basically, throughout the game. A lot of the different things will force you to put environments in play, like you start the game with 1 of them in play, and there are 4 different ones you can end up having in the game. You can get the metal one, you can get wood, you can get ice, and you can get stone. These are all going to help Absorbing Man at different times when the attacks from him go undefended, and they'll also trigger off a whole bunch of the different treacheries in his deck. He has tons of different treacheries that, depending on the type, if he times it just right, if he's metal when he gets steel kick, he's going to have an extra bonus thing here that's going to happen as well. So a lot of his stuff is just timing his thing just right when he has the different environments in play to mess you up in a bunch of different ways, because he's absorbing the different materials. He also, of course, has his ball and chain equipment and could have any of the other experimental equipments that Crossbone had stolen earlier, of course, upgrading him as the game goes along. So he's changing all sorts of different ways, and that's Absorbing Man. So Taskmaster here, he has 1 scheme, 2 attack, and he has a force response. After hero changed to hero form, they discard the top card of the encounter deck and take damage equal to the number of boost icons on that card. So he's really going to be trying to limit the amount you can flip back and forth in between your aspects there. And then he's hunting down heroes as well. So each time you start the villain phase, you're going to have to choose to either put 1 threat here or take 1 damage. So he's going to be hurting you regardless the longer the game goes on. He also has an interesting thing here that's captured by Heroes side scheme, which is going to put one of these captive heroes underneath it, and you can basically try to finish this off, of course, increasing the acceleration that's going there. It's going to take 5 thwart to get that out of there. But you're going to be able to get one of these guys and put them in your deck for the rest of the scenario. Lots of awesome stuff there, which is pretty cool and fun as well. Of course, he has the master weapons stuff like Crossbones, so he's going to have tons of different weapons as well. He's got a bunch of those captured things, and then he's going to have lots of different treacheries that are going to kind of like mess you up and discard cards from your deck, and some different Hydra agents in there as well that can mix you up in all sorts of different ways. So another tricky villain to face off against. All right, Zola. So he's got 2 scheme, 1 attack for his basic side here, and then he has retaliate through all of his stuff here. And one of his cool things here is force response after resolving a step 1 of the villain phase. Place 1 test counter here. Then after 3 or more test counters are there, he discards a card from the top of the encounter deck until he puts a minion in play. So yeah, he's going to be bringing these minions out, and then you're going to get rid of all the test counters. So basically every 3 turns
There's going to be another minion coming out, waves and waves of minion. You're also going to start the game with a Bioservant in front of you as well. And he has toughness, a little bit hard to fight off, and he has several different mutants that you're going to be fighting off, and all these guys are going to be coming out. It feels like he's experimenting on these guys and bringing them out to attack you. There's also all sorts of different attachments that can go on these guys as well. They're going to kind of upgrade a bunch of the different guys and make them even harder to defeat. So there's tons of different mutants in play, and they just keep coming out. And this is definitely one of my favorite ones in the entire scenario. It is my favorite one in the entire scenario, just because there's so many minions you're fighting off against. The retaliate on Zola makes it so you have to be smart when you attack him, because you have to hit him hard or it's not worth hitting him. And lots of exciting stuff here with all the different mutants coming out and getting upgraded as the game goes along. So that's Zola. All right, and then finally the big boss, Red Skull. So he has a scheme of 2, and then an attack of 0, but it has a little asterisk here which says Red Skull gets +1 attack for each side scheme in play. Speaking of which, he has very different rules here, where he starts with a deck of side schemes. It's off to the side. He also starts with the red house in play, which you have to get rid of before you can even damage Red Skull at all. Also, as a forced response on his New World Hydra thing here, is basically at the beginning of each villain phase, you're going to be putting a new side scheme into play, which can do all sorts of stuff. Like, also, there's a sleeper minion that starts outside of play. If you get the sleeper awakened, you can have the sleeper jump in there, which he's pretty mean. He's got guard, retaliate, toughness, 5 times the number of players, 3 attack. This robot is pretty mean, and you have to take him out, of course, because he's building up Hydra and stopping you from attacking him as well. So lots of interesting schemes in here as well. One that I thought was cool too was the fact that this censor the past thing, if you end up defeating it, you can end up shuffling cards from your discard pile back into play. So some of these do good things when you actually are able to take them out. Like this allows you to, it takes an ally and puts it underneath and puts it in prison. And then of course you could go get that ally out of your deck and put it into play. He has all sorts of different stuff with like really strong minions with a decent amount of hit points and toughness and stuff like that. And he's got lots of tricky things going on. So you definitely want to try to take him out before too many of these different conditions and things like that are entering play. But yeah, always having to keep down the threat with all these side schemes coming in play and making sure you're not losing because of the main scheme as well. Red Skull can be annoying, but if you prepare properly, you can hopefully take him out. And he is the final boss in the Rise of the Red Skull campaign for Marvel Champions. Let's take a look at what I think. All right, so Marvel Champions Rise of the Red Skull. So the 2 different heroes in here, I wasn't as sure as I was super excited about it, because it's like Spider-Woman and Hawkeye. Like, Hawkeye's cool, he shoots arrows, but Spider-Woman I didn't know as much about, but I've looked into the comics more, and it's really cool, the split personality of like kind of working with Hydra, being brainwashed with that, and breaking out of that, and working with S.H.I.E.L.D., and kind of being the whole double agent thing. So going into this, I didn't know a lot about her, but I really enjoy her deck overall. It's really cool the way she can have the 2 different aspects, and trying to play as many different aspect cards that are low cost on your turn to boost up her stats is super exciting. And the fact that she has so much confuse and stun and things like that, that stuff is great in solo play and just good for keeping the threat down and not taking as much damage. She has a lot of utility stuff that's really cool for the game, and I really enjoy her playstyle, and the deck building with her is going to be crazy. Being able to mix 2 together, they have to be equal numbers, and trying to figure out how to make that work is going to be a lot of fun for her. And then Hawkeye is definitely really cool too. With all of his arrows, he can do a lot of damage, which is kind of crazy because he just has all these cool attack events that you're going to be trying to figure out how to use your bow to get those out there, get the quiver out to try to grab arrows out of your deck. And the vibranium arrow is really cool because it goes through toughness and stuff like that. There's lots of cool things that Hawkeye can do. His leadership stuff is kind of interesting to me because I don't know that it necessarily he has a bunch of arrows that he wants to play. So the fact that leadership normally has these expensive allies that you're going to be playing as well, there's cool combos in that leadership stuff, which can kind of work together. But the thing is, being able to have the resources to actually pull that off is a little bit tricky. If you switch Hawkeye over to something like aggression, he has all sorts of crazy combos there as well that you can be able to do just massive amounts of damage. And he doesn't have that much hit points, so you're going to have to try to figure out how to protect him as well. So maybe the allies come in handy there as well. But I am really excited about the cards in his deck. I definitely think that
that Jessica Drew is my favorite out of the two, but I'm definitely excited to play with both of them just because they both seem a ton of fun. And I've played through the campaign with both, and it was definitely a little bit easier with Jessica Drew just because stun and confuse is so amazing when you can do that often in Marvel Champions, especially when you're playing solo, because it basically gives you a reprieve to be able to build up more. But yeah, definitely love both the heroes. The campaign as a whole, what do I think about that? One of the things about Marvel Champions is they've released tons and tons of hero packs, but there hasn't been as many villains, and I love the fact that this has come out and given us 5 new villains to face off against, and you can choose to play them in the whole campaign mode to be able to go through and enjoy that storyline and build up your character as the game goes along, or you could just play them as like a one-shot and pull them off to the side. I definitely enjoyed playing all the different villains. Some are more difficult than others. I know Zola is probably my favorite one out of here just because he brings out so many minions and he's mutating them and making them tougher and making them harder to fight off, and they just keep coming wave after wave, and the fact that he has retaliate means you're having to take care of the minions and you're having to take care of him, and the whole time that threat's going up as well. You have to figure out how to mitigate that also. I can see him being my new favorite. He reminds me a lot of the mutagen formula that you had from the Green Goblin set as well, with lots of mutated guys coming out and fighting against you. He's probably going to be my new favorite or new go-to for just like trying out new heroes or trying out new decks and seeing how well they work against him. He seems like he's probably on the higher end of the difficulty, which is super awesome. He was a struggle to get through with the different heroes. But then all of them have their interesting little quirks. Crossbones has the whole adding all sorts of different weapons, and Taskmaster feels a little bit like that, but he's got these allies that you're trying to rescue to help with the campaign. And then the whole Absorbing Man with the whole environments and stuff like that. You kind of hope that Absorbing Man isn't as efficient as he could be, but if you draw the cards in the wrong order out of the deck there, maybe his threats are going to proc more and combo all that stuff together. There's lots of interesting, exciting things in here, and I'm super excited to play it more. The Red Skull, by the time you get to him, especially if you're smart about when you use your stuff, you can save up some of your different abilities, and hopefully you're powered up enough. But once you adjust any of this stuff up to expert mode and start putting in those obligations and all of the terrible stuff, you can basically make these things as hard as you want, especially if you go to heroic and all that crazy stuff. I like to play the game more casually and kind of keep all of my heroes built at the same time and have fun grabbing and picking which hero I want to build and try to tweak them just a little bit, but not a whole lot. But I definitely have enjoyed Rise of the Red Skull. I mean, for me, this is definitely an excellent, just because it adds so much more to the game for me to play. I loved the comic book art inside of the campaign itself. It was cool to be like, oh, we're gonna read a little comic book story and then read a little narrative area here. It was just very interesting the way that stuff worked, and the fact that you could upgrade your characters as you go along. You can play through the campaign again and maybe try to upgrade characters in different ways, or maybe play through again and hope to, when you get to Taskmaster, unlock a different ally to help you out, because those zero-cost allies are super awesome as well. So lots of replayability in it, and things that I think are going to be super interesting, and that's what the game really needed, was more villains to face off against. So for me, Rise of the Red Skull is awesome. I definitely love it. Let me know in the comments down below which villain you think is the hardest to defeat, and which hero you want to take up against this scenario. Let me know. It'd be awesome to have some discussions down there, and thank you for joining me on this review. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll see you on the next one.